All right. Good stuff, guys. Really liking seeing that progression every week on the engagement. Really appreciating that. Thank you, guys. Fred, I believe I have to pass it on to you now.
Yes, I do. Guys, would you please give a warm hand wave to our awesome guest tonight, Alan Gordon. Alan has the distinction of having started barber shopping, I believe, at the age of 10,
Yep.
and has won at least two quartet gold medals that I know of with Gotcha and Masterpiece, and is in besides being a judge and coach, is also now, as of well, a couple of years ago now, the director of the multiple gold medal winning chorus Masters of Harmony. So, Alan, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Fred. Thanks for inviting me. I've done a few of these, but this is my first visit of any kind to Maine, so I appreciate the invitation. And after a little discussion with Fred and George, I've done a couple things on visits like this, but recently I had a request from the Ontario district to put something together specific for the singing category, and right now I'm the singing category specialist for the society, and I guess they'll keep. Even though I've only run one contest season in that position, and then I've canceled more contests than I have actually been in charge of, but I'm trying to spread the education as well, and we decided that this would be a fun little presentation to share with you this evening. Basically, what it is it's an attempt. One of my goals as category specialist is to make sure that our rules make sense. We thought we'd wrote them years ago to stress the fact that good singing is good singing, right? There's some stylistic differences with barbershop, but good singing and good artistry is the same across multiple genres. So what I did is I put together our singing category description, translated it to English a little bit, and also put in some performances that are from non-barbershop groups as well as barbershop groups. So you can kind of see how some of the things we talk about translate across various genres, and they can relate to, if you're not someone who listens to barbershop every day, or you do enjoy a wide variety of singers, you might be able to start clicking your mind things that you can appreciate from outside the barbershop world that may be useful to you in the barbershop world, and particularly with vocal production and vocal expression. So that's what tonight's presentation is. When I share this video, I don't click back to Zoom because it stops. I have a couple auto plays in there that it stops. So Fred or George, or if you want to assign somebody, feel free, between a performance or before I go on to a next thing, if there's a question that pops up in the chat room that you think would be useful, please go ahead and just unmute and speak up and ask me the question, and because I won't be able to see it otherwise. So if you give me a moment. Whoops. There we go. I need someone to make me a admin so I can screen share. There I go. Thank you.
Sorry, that's probably my fault. I was already still sharing. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. They're good. Share computer sound. I want to share that only. I'm going to say share, and then let me start this from the beginning. There we go. So yeah, call this singing category an introduction in real life. You may recognize our barbershop quartet in the corner there. Some local heroes and heroes all the way out to the West Coast as well. And then you'll see at the bottom that we're using some other non-barbershop performances. First, let's get down to kind of why the singing category is what it is. Basically, just like music and presentation, this was a result of what we call we still call these the new categories. Although if you've been paying attention or have watched any of Kevin Keller's teachings on the history of barbershop, this actually, this 28-year-old judging system now from 1993 is the longest continuous and the oldest continuous category system we have ever had in the history of the society. This is the longest we have ever gone without a major overhaul of the category. So we still call these new, but really they're pretty old now. For the singing category specifically, our immediate predecessor was the sound category. We do borrow a few things from the old interp category. We do pay attention a lot to vocal expression, which we will talk about later on. There are some, phrase flow, things like that that we care about, not nearly as much as music and performance would, but we do borrow a little bit from those. And why did we change at that time? At the time, some of the elements rewarded in the sound category were encouraging manufactured vocal production. And if you listen to some of the competitors of the time, they don't sound quite as natural, as amazing as they sound. Acoustics is a great example. Amazing, amazing sound. And while it's hard to say something negative about them, if you took them out of the barbershop world, you could get some criticism from choral people and such that just says, wow, that just sounds like they're trying to make it very rich, versus some quartets now who may be a little more natural. We also seem to be drifting away from advancing beliefs and knowledge in vocal pedagogy. So there were, every 5 or 6 years or so, there's big movements in the vocal industry with different techniques and different thought processes. Speech level singing, for instance, is something that's only maybe about 20 years old on a popular front. And the old sound category really wouldn't have allowed for something like that to be introduced. We were very set in our ways, and it was going to be Miller or nobody else, and that's the only way we were going to do things. We started to homogenize in sound. Our sound delivery, vocal choices, people started to mimic each other. If something won, we'd try and photocopy what they did to score more points in the sound category. And we just needed the flexibility to advance. The sound category was written so strictly that if anything came along, we just had to break the thing and shatter it into pieces in order to make anything happen. So we wanted to write it in a way where we didn't have to totally rewrite categories if we wanted to make some minor changes. So here's the elements that are currently contained in the singing category. Our elevator description, I guess that's how we got to stand in elevators right now. Vocal quality, you will see frequently written throughout the category description: well supported, freely produced, and resonant. That's basically our mantra, our motto. If you can check off those 3 boxes, you get a lot done in this category. Intonation, obvious as to what it is there's a little bit of overlap in other categories. I mean, in-tune singing is better for every category, and rightfully so. We like it better if things are in tune. Unity, synchronization, vowel and formant matching, balance. If you're unfamiliar with the term formant, you probably are familiar with the concept, but maybe not the term. The quick explanation is basically, where a pitch creates a series of overtones that are based on the pitch, a vowel can create a fingerprint of a formant, right? So it's how our ear determines the difference between an ah and an e and an oo and everything like that. They kind of send out a certain spectrum of hertz and everything that tell our ears what's going on. Balance is also part of unity. Expansion, that's probably a word you've heard a lot in barbershop, also called lock and ring sometimes. All of those things we made up. But this is the result of, if you sing well supported, freely produced, and resonant, if you're in tune and you're unified, guess what? You're expanding, and the 4 of your voices expanding merge in with each other and reinforce and highlight each other's voices. And then vocal expression, last but not least, this is the color choices, articulation, shading efficiency, vowels, vocal impact. Really, how are we relaying the story from an artistic standpoint that makes us care? We can do a lot of technical things right, but do we care? So let's break these down kind of one by one and take a look at some examples as we go along as well. So vocal quality, that's at the top of our pyramid because it's the root of all that follows. Without the well-supported, freely produced, and resonant, then all of the other things that happen behind it are basically just not going to easily happen. You'd have to work very hard at them, overcoming other weaknesses to get there. However, as you the opposite applies too. As you get better and as you get more supported and freely produced, a lot of the other things get better as well. Intonation can fall into place a little bit better. Unity can improve because you're not working past tensions and things like that. Expansion grows and you have a little more freedom to express. So let's start listening a little bit. I'm going to, can I mute myself? Yeah, so I'm going to mute myself and you should be able to hear this. Since this is our first sound, it sounds okay on my end, but have your hands near a volume knob if it's a little too much or too little for you. Let's listen to one of our first performances here.
In every heart there is a room, a sanctuary safe and strong, to heal the wounds from lovers past, until a new one comes along. I spoke to you in cautious tones. You answered me with no pretense, and still I fear I said too much. My silence is my self-defense.
So this is a fantastic group that's been around in many formations. I had the pleasure to see their 50-year anniversary tour in 2019, right before they stopped touring and we stopped watching concerts. But it is evident in their sound. The way they approach singing is to take advantage of the resonance of the world. If you've never seen them before, they often, primarily I should say, sing in venues that do not require microphones if sung properly. So wonderfully acoustic halls, and then they present in a wonderfully free and acoustic way so that nothing is dampening their overtones or anything. So everything's fantastic. Some of that fantastic singing does translate into the barbershop world as well, obviously, which is why we care about it. And here's a little barbershop taste.
It's you in the sunrise. It's you in my cup. It's you all the way into town. It's your sweet hello, dear, that sets me up. And it's your gotta go, dear, that gets me down. It's you on my pillow in all of my dreams, till once more the morning breaks through. What words could be saner or truer or plainer than it's you? It's you, only you.
And there I cut him off right there. Sorry for the chorus interruptus there, but so they are using a microphone, but in a video, you'll often see that a group may be, benefited by a microphone. They may be helped by a microphone, whereas here you could tell that their voices are already fully open and resonant and blending with each other prior to hitting the microphone, because we are hearing that same. It doesn't have that same room feel from the King Singers, but you could definitely tell that the basics are there, and it's simple. They're not overworking the song. They're letting the club do the work, as it were, and just singing properly and letting a lot of the music fall together. So that brings us into a couple more choices here, or a couple more elements: intonation and unity. The reason I put these together is because these typically travel hand in hand as we watch groups improve through the levels and work to become better groups. And it makes sense. If you're the type of person who is interested in precise arrivals, and tempos and rhythms and things like that, you're probably also someone who makes sure that when you get to that rhythm, that you're spot on the pitch, right? Or as spot on as you possibly can. Or if you're someone who tries to tune better, you want to get there at the same time. So you probably also improve on tempo as you do that. So these two typically will improve together along the lines. They're also commonly negative affected by issues with vocal quality. Like I said before, if you don't have vocal quality, it's difficult to do and accomplish these other things. Tension of the tongue in the mouth, lack of proper breath management. These can create tensions that will not allow the voice to perform and sing the pitch it was asked to do. It's Earl Moon told me, it told many people, but it's one thing that stuck in my mind early on when he was a monster of the Far Western District and a king of barbershop, is that people don't make mistakes on purpose. You don't. It's not that you told your mouth to sing something out of tune. It's not that you told your voice to sing something late. It's typically that your brain tells it to do it, and then you have some tension or there is some obstruction to whatever it is that you told your voice to do. It got in the way. So it's slightly out of tune, or it's late to tune, or something like that. And getting that tension out of the way is what's going to improve both of these things. If you've ever had an eval with me, I'm not sure any of you had it. I've only been up in your district, I believe, once for judging, but if so, you'd recognize this term that I use all the time. Don't ever sing on accident. Every time you open your mouth, have a purpose. When you inhale, when you start a phrase, when you change from one pitch to the next, everything has to have a purpose. Otherwise, just sound dribbles out of your mouth and stains your shirt. So that's my world-beating theory on improving in barbershop singing. Right there, in a nutshell, is don't sing accidentally. But that little belief of mine applies a lot to this approach here. So I'm actually trying to remember who I have next. This will be a surprise to me as well, but I'll talk about them. Oh, I know what it is. So this next group and this performance in particular, I'm actually going to argue is one of the best a cappella performances that I've ever heard. And when I start playing it, you're going to shake your head and wonder why, because you're going to immediately hear instruments. And you're going to say, that's not a cappella, Alan, silly. But I would argue that those instruments are along for the ride. This group does not need those instruments. They are handling everything, unity, production, interest. The things you're interested in are in their voices and in their harmonies and not in the instrumentals. So I'll mute myself again and move on to this.
Clang, clang, clang went the trolley. Ding, ding, ding went the bell. Sing, sing, sing went my heartstrings. For the moment I saw him, I fell. tipped his hat and took a seat. He said he hoped he hadn't stepped up on my feet. He asked my name, I held my breath. I couldn't speak because he scared me half to death. Buzz, buzz, buzz went the buzzer. Plop, plop, plop went the wheels. Stop, stop, stop went my heartstrings. As he started to leave, I took hold of his sleeve with my hand. And as if it were planned, he stayed on with me, and it was grand just to stand with his hand holding mine to the end of the line.
Absolutely. So you could tell exactly what, and when I stand on the land, and it's not just Joe Stafford that's leading that, right? Obviously, she still maintains out front, but the Pied Pipers behind her are owning exactly what she wants the plan to be, and they're all contributing the same way while maintaining balance, while maintaining tuning and everything like that. But all those little, tiny scoops they choose to do to introduce some of buzz, buzz, buzz with the, little things like that. Absolutely unified, spot on tune, spot on tempo, and just absolutely fantastically unified. And that just always impresses me to hear anything. Actually, the Pied Pipers did a lot, and they did a whole album with Joe. And I recommend if you fish around a little more on YouTube, you can find a little rabbit hole worth of some cool stuff to listen to. So that's fantastic stuff. But that's not barbershop. It's harmony, but it's not barbershop. But boy, does it sure apply. I mean, it's good. It's good no matter what you do. This next one now is the barbershop group, and it's one I'm sure you will recognize right away.
Love nobody but me. You might not is you are it's I mean that I seen that I did that I done that I do. You can't understand love nobody but me. That's all. That's it. I ain't jealous of the fellas that you hang around with. Don't pay no mind. And I'm telling you one more time, you don't do oh no way. I say you did it. Time to do it. To do what to do. What you couldn't do what you shouldn't. Love nobody but me. That's all, that's right. Treat that fake, no names, no minds, my heart, don't lie. And I'm telling you one more time, I'm gonna say one more time. You don't, you won't, no way. I say you didn't, you doesn't, you isn't, you wasn't, you wouldn't, you couldn't, you aren't, you shouldn't. Love nobody but me. Love nobody but me. You gotta go and love nobody but me. Oh yeah.
I will tell you what, the whole rest of the AIC is incredibly jealous that they found that song to be an opener. That's probably the best show opener in recent memory of Champ Quartets, because you walk out on stage of any chapter show and sing that, you're on their side. That's great. But obviously, you can no one's singing on accident there. I mean, they all know exactly what their role is. They know what the plan is. So they are totally unified. And again, it's based in vocal freedom. One thing you'll notice is, as busy as that song is from an arrangement standpoint, the stillness in general of their bodies, with the exception of Brandon and his goofy gopher shuffle on the end there that I make fun of him for. And I will see him I have a meeting with him after this, and I will make fun of him again for that. But other than that, they're pretty still. because they're making sure that the basic vocal production's there. And again, I said this before, let the club do the work. The arrangement itself is complicated, rhythmic, whatever. And if you put effort into that, you're likely to disrupt it. Just make sure that you are fully participating in it, but also don't get in its way. So our next little piece here is expansion. And yes, we absolutely made that term up. That does not exist outside of the barbershop world. But it's not accepted outside in the world, except when we teach it on. Sometimes people get it. It's a psychoacoustic phenomenon we experience when we are cranking, and cranking is, of course, another technical term that we know in the barbershop world. When we're wailing on stuff, when we're opening stuff up and just singing. It happens low volumes and high volumes, but when we really open up and sing, we get a lot of that. We get the presence of more voices. So we've called it overtones, lock and ring, other terms that are comfortable to us. I will read this one straight off because it's a little more complicated. So what it truly is, it is the more energized appearance of various frequencies created by the interactions of formants and harmonics that result from choices in vocal efficiency, general production, vowel choices, along with agreement and balance. So basically, we need to be making sure that we're creating nice, efficient tone, clarity, and that we're all agreeing on what we're doing. This is what our E sounds like. This is what our A sounds like. This is what our Ah sounds like. And the more we can create agreement from there, which of course requires good vocal quality, well supported, freely produced resonant sound. We will magnify that appearance of expansion, so more voices than the sum of the parts. And I said this before, but it's important to note it again. It's not a question of volume. Matter of fact, that was one of the problems with the old sound category, is people tried to just sing louder in order to create the appearance of expansion. But the one thing we need to know is that your voice on an individual level is constantly creating overtones. Okay, even when you speak or sing weakly and meekly, there is some structure of overtone there. We might not be able to hear it as strongly if you're singing weakly, but it's there. On the opposite end, if you're singing really loudly, you will increase the volume of every overtone your voice has, which includes the ones that sound good and sound harmonic and sound pleasant, and also the ones in between which do not sound pleasant. They're the nasty ones. They bring out nasty tones and vocal characteristics and colors, and the pitch of the overtone might clash with the actual pitch you're trying to sing. It's very dissonant and nasty. And we were getting that in the late 80s, actually all the way through the 80s. And so we wanted to clarify that position within the singing category so that it didn't become as much of a thing. I think, I did add a video to this. Let me see which one's first. I think it's the non-barbershop version, but if it's the non-barbershop song first, this is a solo. And it's a acoustic solo, because I wanted you to pay attention to the fact that a expansion is not the result of the four voices coming together. Expansion occurs within your own voice, and it is the alignment of each of our individual expansions that highlight each other and give even the louder impression of unified expansion. So if it's not that performance, then there's a barbershop performance which is also giving awesome expansion. We'll see which one I did first.
Once upon another time, somebody's hands who felt like mine turned the key and took a drive, was free. Highway curve, the sun sank low. Buckley on the radio. A cigarette was burning slow. So breathe. Just yellow lines and tire marks and sun-kissed skin and handlebars. And where I stood was where I was to be. No enemies to call my own, no porch light on to pull me home. And where I was is beautiful because I was free.
And it is amazing that she stayed in key the whole time too. I wouldn't have the guts to do something like that. I'd be totally afraid that I would have drifted up or down and the orchestra would have come in a different key. But um, again, she was just the reason that filled that room was the overtones and the expansion of her voice. And the reason that all occurred was the freedom of it. I mean, that was again a very simple performance of it. She took opportunities to make it more and less intense, so louder and softer, but it was ever present and always there. And if you put that in a quartet, you could sing right around that all day long with no problem and do very well in a barbershop contest. Just put an arrangement around that. So this barbershop example you'll recognize, and you're going to find. These are the champs from this forefront. So our 25th to 16 champs, and this performance is from 2015 though. You'll probably recognize that among the various traits of this quartet, the bass himself creates enough overtones that it almost just allows the rest of the guys just to even sing a little bit easier so that they can increase artistry on that side. But I picked this particular half of one of their songs because it goes all the way from incredibly vulnerable softs to where their voice is almost ready to break, all the way to the point of quite the opposite, where they're ripping into a tag that totally crushes. So let's enjoy a little forefront.
My love, if I should die even death, it wouldn't mean goodbye, for you love me, truly love me, keep on smiling, I'll be there. Then at last, when your life too shall end, we will be together once once again. If you love me, really love me, then whatever happens, I won't care. If you love me, darling, I'll be there, I'll be there. Eternity will share. Whatever happens, I won't care.
And one of the best things about that performance, beyond the expansion, is just the immediacy of bass tenor octaves. I don't know if you ever get a chance to pay attention to something like that. And that goes back to something I said early in this presentation, where if you tell your voice to sing a particular pitch at a particular time, if there's vocal interference, it's going to take a while to get there. But if you're totally free, it's just going to go exactly where you told it to go. And the immediacy with which these guys lock that up is just amazing. This contest, if you remember that, this was Instant Classic Forefront and Main Street 1, 2, 3. This was actually the first international I had the pleasure to judge, because I finally wasn't competing in either chorus or quartet. And I went back to my individual scores, because that was when I was about to go up and hand out a medal. I think my quartet handed out either third or fourth place that year. And I went backstage from the pit, and my quartet guys are like, "Oh, who won?" I have no clue. It's like at each round, I had high and low scores for all three of those guys. I look back at my individual scores later, and I think I should have it written down somewhere that I had my own personal scores. I had Forefront beating Instant Classic by 1, who beat Main Street by 2. That was my across 6 songs. That's how close I was, and that was high and low scores going. So that was crazy. So that takes us to the last piece of the singing category, vocal expression. It's our little puppy dog. We have a lot of. This is my puppy Cassie. We have a lot of technical things within the category that we've already been talking about. You know, vocal production, synchronization, vowels, things like that we're really technical on. But at the end of the day, what we want is to care about a performance. So what is vocal expression? It could be things like intensity changes, including like that last performance, including intentional weakness as a choice. They were very vulnerable and soft right at the beginning of the section we played there. Word highlighting through articulation. Hard consonants if you want to get forceful with something, muted or softened sounds, vowels, things like that. There's a difference between an E and an E, right? So same vowel, but a different treatment based on the emotion you're trying to get across, or the moment, or the pitch, or whatever. As I said before, we do pay attention to pacing and phrasing. Not as much, but we want to make sure you're taking advantage of vocal opportunities presented in the arrangement, and also any emotion being presented in the voice, basically through any of these choices. I put this quote here, but did you care? It has become a mantra of mine, especially as I listen to performances at a higher level, and I'm judging. What's the difference between a 90 and a 95 and 100? I have now written down 100. I wrote down a 100 for a chorus performance in Orlando in 2018, and it wasn't perfect. And I think I wrote down the 100 because it wasn't perfect. I think if it had been absolutely perfect, I wouldn't have noticed it. It kind of made it real. It kind of made it human. And so it finished the job of pulling me over the top emotionally to where I was carried into it. And the quote comes from when the quartet was competing in Kansas City, which would have been 2012, and we were 4th place that year, and this was rehearsing before the finals. And Mark Hale, who had been our original lead, was now one of our primary coaches. And he was, we were singing through our set in the hotel room, and he's looking to us, and he goes, "Yeah, that sounds good." sounds fine. You'll probably meddle somewhere. But we could tell in his voice that he was just not, he's kind of hiding something. And we're like, well, what, man, what's happening? He says, I just I don't care because it doesn't seem like you care. It seems like you're checking boxes and just singing notes, and it sounds good, but I don't care. You don't care. Nobody cares. And that stuck with me. So I've translated that into a bit of a mantra here. So I have three bits of performances here. One of them is actually going to be full, but I'll walk you through each one. Very first one is my favorite vocalist of all time, Ella Fitzgerald, especially from her Verve Songbooks series of albums. I think she could sing. She could sing me a diner menu, and it would be fabulous. But this is Love for Sale. This is the verse of Love for Sale and a little bit of the first chorus of it. And you're probably familiar with the song, but obviously it's a song sung from the point of view of a lady of the evening. And her vocal choices, listen to the vocal choices she uses per each word, and then also how she uses the angle of the melody to also highlight some of those same moods throughout. It's just a fantastically masterful use of vocal performance.
When the only sound in the empty street is the heavy tread of the heavy feet that belongs to a lonesome cot, I open shop. When the moon so long has been gazing down on the wayward ways of the wayward town, that her smile becomes a smirk, I go to work. Love for sale, appetizing young love for sale, love that's fresh and still unspoiled, love that's only slightly soiled, love for sale.
So, I mean, in the intro, she goes between, she's describing the scene, and then she's, I go to work, and you can hear her, describing a scene, becoming the woman, describing the scene, becoming a woman. Little things like her smile becomes a smirk. The weight of the R that she puts in smirk sounds like a smirk. The right before that cut off right there, she has the very slight delay before she says the word slightly soiled. Love that's only slightly soiled, and just putting a little articulation on that. Those things apply in the singing category. They work in a cappella as well. If you agree with it, if the arrangement feeds into it, if you all own it, you can do little things like that highlight a story. This next performance does go back to the barbershop world. It is the late great Randy Chisholm and Marquis in what was an unfortunately foretelling plea on his behalf not long before he passed away at a very young age. This was thankfully given to the whole world on PBS on a wonderful special. But this guy is one of the most if you put the expression part of the singing category on a pedestal, this is one of the best.
I will know this world but once, and if there's any love that I can give,
And believe every man that word says. Um, it, it it's a shame so many of us have been taught to a point where we're thinking so much that we let our brain get in the way of our voice, where you can see someone like that who very clearly leads with the heart. His voice embodies his heart, and his body dictates all of that. It's amazing that he doesn't let the brain get in the way of what he knows to be vocally true. And I wish that kind of level of ownership on all of us, including myself. I wish to be half as impressive and expressive as he is. My last example here is from outside of the barbershop realm, quite outside, and I would ask you to keep in mind the question, do you care? So this is a performance, I'll tell you right out front. It's good. It's very good. I mean, guy's a good singer, but it's a different style and a different type of voice where, if it was in the barbershop world, you'd probably say, it's got some tension, it's got some issues, it's got this, it's got that. However, the question comes to mind, do you care? So this is a performance by a gentleman who's got other songs, and this is one that wasn't even intended to be public. So he learned that, God, I've done this like 25 times and I still have trouble getting through it. So this guy learned that his father was diagnosed with uncurable cancer, and he took some time off and he went back to be with him in the hospital for some of the treatments they were trying to do, and to take care of things at home. And while he was alone in the hospital room with his dad, was writing out this song as his message to him. And it was more therapeutic than most anything else. And he got to sing it for him. And his handlers, managers, whatever, said, you know what, you should record this. And he said, okay, if I'm going to record this, it's going to be by my rules. We're going to do one take, and I'm going to do it, warts and all, and we're done. And they said, okay, fine. So he did it. He recorded it that way. Then they said, okay, you should really do a video. He says, well, I don't know what else to do on the video. It's going to be very simple. And they said, that's fine. Do what you know. And he said, same rules. He said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do one take. It's going to be the way I want to present it. And that's going to be it. And so this was the resulting video of his message to his dying father.
Before they turn off all the lights, I won't read you your wrongs or your rights. The time has gone. I'll tell you good night, close the door. Tell you I love you once more. The time has gone, so here it is. I'm not your son, you're not my father. We're just two grown men saying goodbye. No need to forgive, no need to forget. I know your mistakes and you know mine. And while you're sleeping, I'll try to make you proud. So just close your eyes, don't be afraid. It's my time to chase the monsters away. Oh, well, I'll read a story to you. Only difference is this one is true. The time has gone. I folded your clothes on the chair. I hope you sleep well, don't be scared. Time has gone, so here it is. I'm not your son, you're not my father. We're just two grown men saying goodbye. No need to forgive, no need to forget. I know your mistakes and you know mine. And while you're sleeping, I'll try to make you proud. So daddy, won't you just close your eyes? Don't be afraid, it's my time to chase the monsters away. Sleep a lifetime, yes, and breathe the last word. You can feel my hand on your arm. I will be the last one, so I'll leave a light on. Let there be no darkness in your heart. But I'm not your son, you're not my father. We're just two grown men saying goodbye. No need to forgive, no need to forget. I know your mistakes and you know mine. And while you're sleeping, I'll try to make you proud. So daddy, won't you just close your eyes? Don't be afraid, it's my time to chase the monsters away.
And that's it. That's one where you wonder if you care. He certainly told the story with his voice, and that's what we're all here to do, whether we're just performing in barbershop groups or otherwise. The human voice is meant to move people, and we hope that the category does well to balance between the techniques that allow for that better, but also recognizing when it's achieved, and when it happens, and when there's moments. We can't be totally heartless, and we can't also be totally careless with our emotions. So it's a fine balance. But I want you guys to know that it's not all technique. We want the technique so that you're allowed more of these opportunities to move people, because that's a fantastic way to spend your barbershop time. Were there any questions on the presentation?
Alan, yeah, this is Fred. This has been fantastic. So let's assume that the first goal is to develop a well-supported, freely produced, resonated tone.
Uh-huh.
Is there kind of a 12-step program to get there?
A lot. I mean, yes, and it can be fewer than 12 steps, but a lot of it is my short answer to that is you are your own best voice teacher, right? So the voice teachers you bring from outside, including coaches from barbershop world, or whether it's on a personal level, are there to guide your understanding of how it is that everything operates, right? We can't do it for you, and it's impossible without being inside your body to say exactly what it is that you're doing, and what we need to do. So from a technical standpoint, some of the most important basic things, and you may have heard this more so lately, because we've been coming around to teaching the importance of this more, is alignment. Used to be called posture, but typically if we introduce it as posture, um, you're going to introduce tension into your body by trying to stiffen up and stand up straight. Really what it is a few key points. You want your body to be balanced to where it's um, out of spots that can hold tension. So your ankles kind of line up over the center of your knees, line up over the highest point of your hips, okay? Line up over the shoulders. And then probably one of the most common ones that we do as barbershoppers is the ear holes do need to line up with the top of the shoulders. Because we're typically lunging forward like this because we're trying to perform more. And somehow if we lunge forward, that makes better. But if you watch that, obviously, if you know that the air is coming through that and trying to vibrate things, that's not a particularly fantastic position for an instrument to be in. So getting yourself just aligned in a relaxed fashion, you may even feel that some of the easiest way of doing that alignment, instead of pulling your head back, is picturing lengthening the back of the neck, and that can kind of pull the head up into a nice interesting position. And you may even feel that your Adam's apple is a little, if you're one who's lunging more commonly, you may feel slightly uncomfortable in this position for a little bit, and you got to constantly move yourself around. When you find that you get in that position, you can almost instantly tell, even with your speaking voice, the difference between here and here, how much more of your instrument becomes active when it's aligned like that. From there, it's a lot of guidance. So are you someone whose jaw gets in the way? Are you someone whose tongue gets in the way? So it's exercises that walk through that, and they need to be guided. You need to have an ear out front pointing through some of those things. I will say we are blessed nowadays in that YouTube has fantastic free lessons on a lot of things. If you in particular say, I have trouble with X, you could probably search I have trouble with X on YouTube and get 3 or 4 different opinions as to how to address that. And most of the time, all those opinions are right, although their approach to get there may not be the same. You pick the one that you like the best and that you feel the most result with. So again, you are the voice teacher, but you need to go out and do a little hunting and a little digging. But alignment itself is one of the biggest pieces, because we introduce tension throughout the body in various places unnecessarily that get in the way of basic vocal production. It is no coincidence that a tiny baby, can create so much sound and not get vocally tired, right? The reason for that is that they have not had a voice teacher filling their head with, pardon my French, a bunch of horse shit that makes them tense up, grab something, do something weird with their voice. They're doing what God gave them, right? They're breathing properly because that's the way you naturally breathe. We put so much thought into what the diaphragm does, yet it's a muscle that we can't directly control. But if we relax, the guts and let the air come in, and we keep the ribs mostly expanded, to a relaxed expansion, breathing kind of takes care of itself from that point on. And if you're aligned, a lot of the rest of it does as well. It's a very natural process. And typically the older we get, the more we get in its way, because we've had fancy people tell us what to do. And we need to seek others who will take that stuff out of our brains so that we can stay out of our own way and keep improving.
Alan, can I ask a question very much related to that?
Yep.
There's something that we hear again and again from people is we need to create space. And in my experience for myself, and I've seen in others, the act of creating space creates tension. So what is the trade-off there? Space versus tension? How do you do that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is a degree of how much you do something, right? So So there's nothing wrong with a raised palate, raised soft palate, but there is something wrong with a raised soft palate beyond the point of a nice natural lift to where you're now creating tension on the backside of it, right? So this goes exactly in line with some of the alignment talk, right? So again, if you look this way and you see that stretch, and you picture the vocal mechanism like this, and of course now it's going like this, right? So if here's the vocal folds and here's the mouth, if we're reaching out, we're not going to have a lot of natural space to our instrument. Okay, so some people have told us, well, lift your palate more, drop your Adam's apple more, so that you create the space, and it kind of works because but the problem is you're compensating for a problem you started by sticking your head out in the first one. If you align it right, then you have all this natural rich space here where, yes, I would say on a day-to-day basis, from your speaking voice to your singing voice, you typically should have a higher raised palate. Let me use this little exercise that you can all do while you're muted. And self-exploratory again. So you got to be the voice teachers here, but just speak, with no real care. Just say, yesterday I went to the store. Say it. Yesterday I went to the store. Okay. Now, for those of you, children, grandchildren, young nieces and nephews, imagine this was part of a child's book. Okay. And you're going to say, yesterday I went to the store. Try that. Yesterday I went to the store. Okay. Now, would you say there was a little more space in your second version? Is that honest? Probably a little bit. Okay. But would you say there's tension in the second version? I don't think so. Not typically. Some of you may, but typically just something as simple as that. The Adam's apple dropped a tiny bit more. The palate lifted a little bit from your daily boring version to your slightly activated version. So to me, the two things are, get the alignment, because you're going to gain a lot of natural space that you do not have to manufacture. And then number two, yes, take a slight approach to making your singing voice a little bit more active than your speaking voice, but I wouldn't go overboard, because you can definitely overlift the palate and you could press down the Adam's apple, neither of which are advisable. So if it's more space, it's typically because we're clamping it down this way. Another way that space can go away is swallowing the tongue. If there's tongue tension involved, and a good way to check for that is while you're singing. We talk about we want the tongue to stay touching the bottom teeth, but not in a hard way. A lot of people take that to mean, push that forward, lock it into place, and flatten the tongue. Well, if you do that, you're not going to get the formants from any vowels, because an E, the tongue position of an E is that. The tongue position of an oo is kind of that. I can't bend my hand the right way, but it's got an arch to it in order to make that vowel sound happen. The problem is either the hard flat tongue, which you can feel here in your some of us have to dig through a couple layers to get to the muscle, but you can feel whether the tongue is overactive or not. As a matter of fact, with your thumbs here, go ahead and stick your tongue to the roof of your mouth and just press it to the roof of your mouth. And you can feel that, and you can feel that that's hard as a rock, right? Now, kind of relax the tongue, and you can feel that that's nice and fleshy and soft. Okay. Now you can try and sing just a simplified E. Maybe do two things first. Make sure even though you're sitting down, make sure your ear holes are over your shoulders a little bit. Extend the back of the neck. Okay. And with that active voice, as if you're reading to a child again, try just a simple E, 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 and see what that does. It's probably not going to be as particularly soft and fleshy as your totally lazy tongue. I don't think you're ever going to get that lazy, but it should be pliable, and it shouldn't be anywhere near the tongue stuck to the roof of the mouth feel. So I kind of went to your question and then kind of went beyond that, but hopefully that was helpful in the answer.
Yes.
But yes, there can be a thing as too much space. If you feel tension, either way, it's too much. Yep.
So, I mean, there's another, I mean, does it sounds like tension bad of any sort? So if you feel tension, find the source and kill it.
Yeah. But there's
Cut it
also,
out.
I mean, I want to warn against the fact that, because obviously your vocal folds come together with just the right amount of tension, right? Now that happens through Bernoulli's principle for the most part. It's drawing them together, but there is a tiny bit of there has to be a little bit of engagement. Those are muscles down there. They have to have engagement and resistance for the air to come through and do that, right? So the problem when we talk about getting rid of all kinds of tension is some people just kind of go the other direction, and they have their tone like this, and we call that totally inefficient singing, right? So there is a happy medium, and if I'm in front of a group, I typically have them walk through, again, exploring their own voice, finding where's that total point of inefficiency, and then swing it to the other end. Where's that end of the folds being absolutely pressed together, and then and where's that happy medium where doesn't feel painful, feels strong but not pressed, and what you hear in your head and what others hear from you is a clarion kind of tone it's got plenty of structure to it, but it's not unpleasant, right? And you got to find that middle ground of efficiency. And but again, that goes back on your shoulders a little bit to hunt that stuff down and work on that as well. Yep. Others?
Oh, I have another one since
Sure.
nobody's unmuted yet. It's unrelated to that. It's more of a comment or an agreement, but I think for a long time, early barbershopping, I know I made this mistake and I hear it a lot. People mistake expansion for volume, and you mentioned that. And you hear a good quartet or chorus singing and you hear this, what sounds really loud, but really what it is expansion. And it makes you think you need to sing louder to make that same sound. So I'm guessing you fight that when you're dealing
I mean,
with people.
it's extremely, I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? If something's going to sound that big, then I personally have to do something big to make that happen. And that's just not true. But it takes a while to convince yourself of that. I mean, especially if you consider early Westminster. I mean, they had 100 guys this year, but typically when they've won previously, they've had 60 guys, 70 guys, as low as in their very first contest, 30 guys, 35 guys. But the purity of tone with which they generate sound creates the presence of quite a few voices larger than the personage that appears on stage. So it's very needed. So some of the reason for that, so this is very interesting. So if you rip your vocal folds out of your throat, right, and you're just holding your vocal tract, well, not the whole vocal tract, just the vocal folds as an instrument, and you blew through them like a mouthpiece on a trumpet, you would hear basically the same thing. It would just be just, there's nothing near the sound that comes out of here. And as a matter of fact, you would hear just the nastiest overtones and all the expansion would have everything on the spectrum would be included, and it would just be a cacophonous, nasty mess. So what your vocal tract does when it's in the right position is your vocal tract does not add anything. What it does is it subtracts the ugly frequencies, the unpleasant frequencies, right? So if you just put it in the position it's supposed to be in, then our designer already designed us to have the most pleasant tone in the most relaxed position, because that's what they built the instrument for. So when we start overdoing any of the lifts or tucks or tongue tension or jaw or things like that. We are reintroducing some of the nasty things that had already been meant to be filtered out by the purity of our vocal instrument. So it's very interesting when you think of it that way, that the voice is a subtractive mechanism rather than an additive mechanism. It can help you get out of your own way. The rules for good vocal production are more basic than we think. It's not, oh, you have to put your tongue here, your jaw here, you're this here, you're that there, you're that there. It's like, no, stop thinking about those things and just let them be where they are. Make sure you're aligned. Take a nice deep breath and have a go at it in a way in which you'd communicate to somebody. You know, this is speech level singing at its best, but it's much more simple than you think. But unfortunately, many of us have been drilled in, so myself included, we've been told so many things that we're constantly thinking about all those things not to do instead of the simple things. Just do these couple things. You're good to go. Yep. Are you singing, Carl, or are you asking a question? Just
So
I
does
was
anyone-
I was singing Marquee, as a matter of fact.
very good.
I love that. It's interesting.
Whoops, you remuted somehow, Carl.
That song was featured on Livewire this week, and it has always brought me to tears because I know the story. And I sent it to the 3 other guys in my quartet. Not that I would ever dare to try to sing that song because it's a very special thing, but I never looked at it the way you had us look at it tonight. By the way, I think this is wonderful. I want to thank you so much for everything you've told us.
Well, thanks, Carl. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Alan before we let him go? Alan, this has been absolutely wonderful, just fabulous. I
Well, thanks,
can't
Fred.
say enough good things about it, and we are truly honored. Again, the last call for questions, and seeing nobody unmuting. I did want to invite Ron to speak. He wanted to say a couple things to the chapter tonight during the business meeting.
So if there's nothing else, I will bid adieu. And thank you, gentlemen. I actually have a singing category meeting to head to at 6 o'clock. So
Well,
Thanks,
thanks,
everybody.
Alan.
You're
We'll
welcome.
get some gotcha and masterpiece stories another time.
Yeah, please do. Hopefully we're back live soon enough. But you know, I've never sung in a quartet in Maine, so I'm just saying maybe there's a way we can hear those stories in person.
That would be awesome.
We'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Bye.